You don't need to be alone to feel completely invisible. You can be surrounded by people scrolling through messages, laughing at conversations, and still feel like no one really knows you. Not the real you. The one behind the polite replies, the filtered personality, the version of yourself you learn to show the world. And maybe the hardest part is this: if something amazing happened today, you wouldn't know who to tell. If something broke inside you, you'd probably keep it to yourself. This isn't just loneliness. This is something deeper. It's a loop, a psychological loop that slowly pulls you away from people while convincing you, and if you don't understand it, you can spend years stuck inside it without even realizing why. Most people think loneliness is simple. They think it's about being alone, being isolated, having no one around. But that's not what this is. This kind of loneliness exists in crowded rooms, in group chats, in conversations where you're smiling, nodding, responding, and still feeling like something is missing. It's the feeling of being present, but not fully there. Like your body is in the moment, but your mind is slightly behind it. Watching, observing, adjusting. You notice how you sound. You think about what to say next. You measure how much of yourself to show, not consciously, but automatically. And that's the first thing most people don't realize. You're not disconnected because you don't care. You're disconnected because you've learned to be careful. Careful with what you say, careful with how much you show, careful with how much you expect. And that carefulness feels like control, but it comes with a cost, because connection doesn't happen in control, it happens in openness. And openness is exactly what your brain has been trying to limit. Think back for a moment, not to one big event, but to small ones. Moments that seemed insignificant at the time, like when you shared something that mattered to you and the other person changed the subject. Or when you tried to explain how you felt and it didn't land the way you hoped. Or when you were there for someone, but when you needed them, they weren't there in the same way. None of these moments feel big enough to change you, but they do, because your brain is always learning, not in words, but in patterns. It doesn't store, this person didn't understand me. It stores, opening up leads to disappointment. And once that pattern forms, everything starts to shift. You don't stop talking, you don't disappear, you just adjust. You become slightly more filtered, slightly more reserved, slightly more controlled, until one day you're still there, but not fully visible. And here's where it gets deeper, because your brain doesn't just react to the past, it starts predicting the future. Before anything even happens, you pick up your phone, scroll through your contacts, pause on a name, and for a brief second, you feel the urge to reach out, to say something simple. Hey, how have you been? But then your mind steps in. What if they're busy? What if they don't respond? What if this feels awkward? And just like that, the moment closes. You lock your phone, you move on, and it feels small, insignificant, but it's not, because moments like that are where connection begins. And when they don't happen, connection never even gets the chance to exist. Later that day, you check your phone again. No messages, no notifications, and a quiet thought appears. No one reached out, and that thought feels like evidence, but it's incomplete, because it doesn't include the message you didn't send, or the hesitation on the other side, because here's something most people never consider. The person you didn't text might have thought about texting you too. They might have paused, overthought, hesitated, just like you. Two people, same feeling, same fear, same silence. And because of that, nothing happens. Not because connection wasn't possible, but because both sides were waiting for certainty. And connection doesn't start with certainty, it starts with risk. There are also moments that almost become something more. You're talking to someone. The conversation is easy, comfortable, and then there's a small opening, a moment where you could say something real, something honest, something that might shift everything. You feel it, that moment, that edge, but instead you step back, you change the subject, you keep it light, you stay safe, and later you tell yourself that connection just wasn't that deep. But the truth is, it could have been. You just didn't cross the line between safe and real. Over time, this becomes a pattern, not a conscious one, but a repeated one. And that's how the loop forms. You hold back, connection stays surface level, you feel unseen, you hold back even more, and every time this repeats, it feels more true. Until eventually, you stop questioning it. You stop saying, I feel disconnected, and start saying, I'm just not a people person. I don't really connect with others. I prefer being alone, and part of that feels real, because being alone does feel easier. There's no pressure, no uncertainty, no risk of being misunderstood. But over time, ease turns into emptiness, because something important is missing. Not noise, not interaction, but connection. The kind where you don't have to think before every sentence, where you don't have to filter every emotion, where you don't feel like you're slightly outside yourself. And when that kind of connection is missing, your mind fills the space. Your thoughts become louder, more repetitive, more convincing. You replay conversations, you analyze small details, you imagine scenarios that never even happened. And without someone to challenge those thoughts, they start to feel real. You begin to believe, no one really cares. I'm not interesting enough. I always end up alone, not because it's reality, but because it's repeated. And repetition creates belief, and belief shapes behavior. So you stop trying in the same way. Not completely, but subtly. You engage but less deeply. You respond but less honestly. You show up but less fully. And that's the paradox. You're around people, but still feel invisible, because the version of you they see isn't the full version of you. But here's the truth most people miss. This isn't about having more people in your life. It's about having moments where you feel safe enough to be real. And if you haven't experienced that often, your brain starts to believe it doesn't exist. But it does. It's just rare. And rare things require something different. Not perfection, not confidence, but willingness. Willingness to step slightly outside the pattern you've been following, to do something small that feels uncomfortable. You send the message before your thoughts stop you. You say one honest sentence instead of holding it in. You stay in the moment instead of pulling away. Not perfectly, not smoothly, just differently. Because every small moment like that interrupts the loop. It shows your brain something new, that not every attempt leads to rejection, that not every connection ends in disappointment. At first, it will feel wrong, unnatural, even uncomfortable. You might regret it, replay it, question it. That's normal. Because you're stepping outside a pattern your brain has trusted for years. But slowly, something begins to shift. Not all at once, but enough. Enough to notice a reply that feels genuine, a conversation that goes a little deeper, a moment that feels real. And for a second, you don't feel invisible anymore. Not because the world changed, but because you stopped hiding inside it. The hardest part about loneliness is not the silence. It's the story you start telling yourself because of it. That you're not interesting enough, not important enough, not worth knowing. But those thoughts aren't facts. They're echoes. Echoes of moments that hurt you in the past. And the longer you stay in the loop, the louder those echoes become. But here's something you need to remember. You are not behind in life. You are not broken. You are not someone who just doesn't have people. You are someone who learned to protect yourself and just hasn't unlearned it yet. And that can change, slowly, quietly, one small step at a time, one message, one conversation, one moment of courage. Because the truth is, you don't need to become someone else to be seen. You just need to stop hiding the person you already are. And one day, you'll sit across from someone laughing without thinking, speaking without filtering, and realize something quietly: the loop is gone, and connection finally feels safe again.